Are about to start section 7 of this course, that is functions in C. Let me give you brief agenda of this section. We'll start with introductory concepts of functions. It will be followed by discussion of user-defined functions in more detail. We will also discuss how to pass parameters to the function in different ways. This will be followed by discussion of very important concept, that is storage classes. Then recursive functions are discussed in more detail. This section discusses various interesting coding challenge implementations using functions in C. Let me briefly tell these challenges to you. We'll implement the code to find out the case of given character. We'll also implement the code to print all odd numbers right from 1 to n, printing the tables, implement the code for checking whether the given year is a leap year or not, check whether the given number is a prime number or not. We will also find out the factorial of given number using two methods, iterative and recursive. We will also print Fibonacci series on the screen using two approaches, that is iterative and recursive. So a lot of interesting coding challenges are there, and these coding challenges you have to implement by creating your own user-defined functions in C. I'm sure that this content will excite you a lot. Thank you. Happy learning. In this session, we are going to introduce the concept of functions in C programming language. C is procedure-oriented programming language. So in C, always program is written in the form of procedure. Function is considered as a building block of a C program. So far we have used main function. We have also used library functions in the implementation of certain programs like printf, scanf, getch, etc. We are going to discuss user-defined functions in detail in this particular module. So first question is, why to use function? What is the need of using a function? So function is a piece of code which repeats frequently. So rather than writing that code repeatedly, it is always better to write that code only once and use that code whenever required. Functions are also helpful to break bigger code into collection of smaller codes. Debugging and maintenance activity is simplified due to use of functions, because each function is performing a particular task and then we can find out the exact problem in the code. Let's understand some basic concept related with the functions. So function is actually a logical unit of code, and that logical unit is given some unique name. Function always perform some specific task. For example, finding out a factorial of number, finding out area of triangle. So these are the specific tasks, and we are writing function to perform these tasks. When we are using function, there is a code which is calling the function. We will call it as a caller. Caller may pass certain arguments to the function. These arguments are input to the function. Code responding to the call is a callee. So callee accepts the argument, processes them, and may return some value to the caller. So that return value we may call as the output of the function. Pictorially, function can be shown like this. So function accepts some parameters from the caller, process these parameters, and it produces a result, and finally the function may return a result to the caller. Function executes only when it is called. Any function can call any other function any number of times. So there is no restriction on which function can call which another function or no restriction in terms of number of calls as well. When function execution ends, then it returns to the same point from where it was called. Let's discuss main function in more detail. So main is considered as the most important function in a C program. Program execution always starts from main function. So irrespective of what is your first line of code in your program, execution always starts with the main function. This is an example of main function. Note that in this example, main function is having return type as an integer. This function is not accepting any argument. There is some code inside the main function, and since the return type of the function is an integer, this function is having return value as a 0. Integer is a by default return type of the function, and when we are using integer as a return type, the function has to return some integer value. In above case, main function is not accepting any argument. However, there are certain arguments that we can pass to the main function. In later sections, we'll discuss how to pass arguments to the main function in detail. Let's discuss about library functions. Library functions are predefined functions. They are available as a part of C library. So certain tasks which are required again and again. So code for this task is already written using the library functions. So library function reduce or simplify your work. You can use the library function as per your requirements. For example, we can use the library function printf, scanf, and we know that the declaration of printf and scanf is there in the header file stdio.h. Few more examples of library functions are sinx, exponentiation x, log x, and so on. So these are the mathematics related library function, and they are available to you inside math.h header file. In this session, we discuss introduction of functions in C. In the next session, we are going to discuss user-defined functions in detail. Thank you. See you again. In this session, we are going to discuss user-defined functions in C language. Let's understand basic concepts related with user-defined functions. User-defined functions are the customized functions which are written as per specific requirement in program. For example, suppose we want to write a function to display the percentage of marks scored by a student, then I need to write a user-defined function in this case. Here programmer need to write the complete code of the function and call that code wherever is required. Let's take an example of finding out the area of circle. Suppose this is the code we have written for finding out the area of circle, and you can see that entire code is written inside the main function, and we are not using any user-defined function in this case. So we'll discuss this example, convert this code or a program so that it will make the use of user-defined function. Let's understand the elements of user-defined function. There are three important elements of user-defined function. The first one is function declaration or function prototype. Second element is function call, and third element is function definition. So suppose we write the C program using user-defined function to find out the area of circle, then this program will look like what is shown in the figure. And here on line number 2, there is a function declaration. We can also call it as a function prototype. There is a call to the function on line number 10, and function definition is given from line number 14 to 19. So we'll discuss in detail how exactly we can write the function declaration, function call, and function definitions. Let's go ahead and discuss these elements one by one in detail. Let's start with function declaration. Function declaration tells compiler basic information about the function. So it tells compiler about what is the name of function, how many arguments are required, type of arguments, and it also tells about what is the return type of the function. Function declaration is optional if function is defined before first call to that particular function. So even if you skip function declaration, it is fine, but you need to define the function before its first call. Let's discuss the syntax of function declaration. First, you need to mention the return type, space, name of the function, and in circular bracket you have to provide the parameter list. Make sure that there is a semicolon at the end of function declaration. Let's see an example. For example, here is the function declaration for the finding out the area of circle. In this case, float is the return type, C area is the name of function, and this function accepts one argument, and that argument is of the type float. There is a semicolon at the end of function declaration. Let's go ahead and discuss this function declaration in more details. So return type tells about what type of value will be returned by the function. Return type can be any valid data type in C, and if we are using return type for a data type, then there should be return statement and caller should accept the return value. If return type of the function is void, it means that this function is not returning anything. Name of the function can be any valid identifier. So in earlier sessions we have discussed the rules for forming an identifier. So all that rules are applicable here as well. Arguments to the function are helpful to accept the values from the caller. Make sure that only data type is essential of these arguments when we are declaring the functions. So we can skip the name of the arguments when we are declaring a function. Let's go ahead to the second element of the function, that is function definition. So general structure of function definition is like this. There are actually two parts. First part is function header. So function header is something similar to function declaration. However, there is an important difference that here the argument names are required. These argument names are optional in case of function declaration. And second part of the function definition is function body. So here actually we write the code of the function. So function body contains various parts like local variable declaration, function statement, and a return statement. Let's discuss function definition in more detail. So function definition we can provide either before main function or after main function. Let's understand the syntax of function definition. Return type is there, the name of the function, and in circular bracket mention the parameters. Note that there is no semicolon at the end of closing circular bracket. Then there is an opening curly brace, and I need to write the code of the function inside these curly braces. Generally, the first few lines of the code is declaration of local variables, then actual function code, and then there is a finally return value. Return statement is optional depending on what is the return type of the function. And then there is a closing bracket. So example of function definition is shown in the figure, line number 14 to 19. Float is the return type of the function. C area is the name of the function. Accepts one argument. That argument is of the type float and name of the argument is R. and in curly braces you are mentioning the code of the function. Let's discuss third element of the functions in detail, that is function call. You need to make the function call whenever you need the execution of the function. If corresponding function is accepting certain argument, then you have to pass that arguments when you are calling the function. If function is returning some value, then you have to accept that value inside a variable, and that variable should be of appropriate data type. Syntax of function call is like this: accept or return value equal to name of the function, and in circular brackets provide the argument list. Note there is a semicolon at the end of function call. Example is area equal to C area in the bracket radius. So here C area is the name of the function, radius is the argument passed to the function, and area is a variable which is declared inside the main function to accept the return value. Let's discuss return values in more detail. So return statement is useful in functions to return a value. Function can return value of any valid data type, for example integer, float, character, pointer, structure, etc. Very importantly, function can return maximum one value. Syntax of return statement is like this: return is the keyword, in circular bracket mention the constant, variable or expression, and that value will be returned. There is a semicolon at the end of return statement. For example, return in the bracket A. So whatever is the value of variable A, that value will be returned in this case. So this is the final program we have written to find out the area of circle. So you can see that in this program, on line number 2 there is a function declaration, on line number 10 there is a function call, and on line number 14 to 19 there is a function definition. So rather than writing the code to find out the area of circle as a part of main function itself, we have written that code outside in a separate user defined function, and then we can call this function any number of times whenever we want to calculate the area of circle. So in this session we discuss user defined functions in detail. In the next session we are going to discuss function parameters. Thank you. See you again. In this session we are going to discuss function parameters in detail. There are two types of variables when we are using the function. The first one is a local variable and second one is a global variable. Let's understand the meaning of each one of these in detail. See the code which is there on the slide. This code finds out the area of circle, and here I have not used any user defined function. So let's discuss the concept of local variable. Local variable is a variable which is declared inside a function. So that function can be any user defined function or a main function. Local variables are accessible inside that function only in which they are declared. For example, in this figure, variable radius and variable area, which are declared on line number 6 and 7, they are the local variables for the main function. So meaning is that I can use radius and area, these variable, inside the main function only. I cannot use these variables outside the main function. Let's discuss the concept of global variable. Again, I have some code written on the slide. So global variable is declared before main function. And very importantly, global variable is accessible in all functions of that particular program. For example, variable pi declared on line number 3 in the code. This variable is a global variable, and since it is a global variable, it is accessible to me inside all functions which are written in that particular program.
Let's discuss the concept of formal and actual arguments. Actual arguments are used when we are calling the function. For example, in this code, on line number 9, there is a function call, and here radius is the actual argument for the function C area. Let's discuss the concept of formal argument. Formal argument is used inside the function definition. Values to the formal arguments are assigned using actual arguments. Number and order of formal arguments is same as that of actual arguments. For example, on line number 12, there is a function definition, and in this line, variable r is a formal argument for the function. So variable r receives the same value which is there inside the radius variable, and that value is passed as an argument to the function when the function is called. There are two methods of parameter passing to the function. First method is call by value. Let's understand the call by value method. For example, on line number 10 in the code, we are calling the C area function, and here we are using call by value method. Another method is a call by address. Call by address method we are going to discuss in detail when we'll discuss the concept of pointers. Let's understand the call by value method in more detail. Here value of the variable is passed to the function as a parameter. In this case, value of actual argument is copied into the corresponding formal argument. So there is a copying of values from the actual argument to formal argument. The value of actual parameter cannot be modified by the formal parameter, and if any changes are made in the value of formal parameter, these changes are not visible to us inside the main function. Note that different memory is allocated for both actual as well as formal parameters. So though sometimes the name of actual and formal arguments are same, but still they are the two different variables having separate memory allocation. So we discussed function parameters in detail in this session. In the next session, we are going to discuss storage classes. Thank you. In this session, we are going to discuss storage classes in C programming. Storage classes decide scope and lifetime of the variable. So let's understand the meaning of scope and meaning of the lifetime. Scope is helpful to determine the portion of the program where the variable is accessible. So whenever we declare a variable, we want to know where exactly that variable is accessible, and in this case, scope helps us. Lifetime is the period during the execution of the program in which variable exists in memory. So we know that whenever we declare a variable, certain memory is allocated for that variable. So that memory remains allocated till certain time period, and that time period is decided by lifetime of the variable. There are 4 different types of storage classes in C, namely auto, register, static, and extern. Let's discuss these storage classes one by one in detail. We will start with auto storage class. It is a default storage class for the local variable. So any point of time when we are using local variable, these local variables belong to auto storage class. For example, we have declared float radius as a local variable in earlier program. So here radius is having auto storage class. Default value for the auto storage class variable is a garbage. Garbage means unpredictable. It can be anything. Scope of automatic variable is limited to the function or block in which variable is declared. So that particular variable is accessible in that function only. It is not accessible outside the function. Lifetime of auto variable is equal to lifetime of the function in which variable is declared. So whenever the function execution start, then memory is allocated for the local variables or automatic variables, and this memory remains allocated till the point that particular function is in execution state. The moment function stop its execution, then memory for automatic variable is deallocated. Let's discuss the second storage class, that is a register. In register storage class, variables are stored in CPU register rather than main memory. For example, register is the keyword, int counter. Register storage class is particularly useful when we want to have the quick access for frequently required variables. Scope and lifetime of the automatic variable and register variable, they are similar. Default value for the register storage class is again garbage. Pay attention that storing a variable inside the register is request to compiler. This request may or may not be granted by the compiler. Next storage class is extern. Extern storage class is used when variable is defined outside the scope of function. It gives reference to some global variable. For example, in earlier program we have used pi as a float variable with the value 3.14, and that variable was declared above the main function. So here in this case it is having extern storage class. Default initial value for the extern variable is 0. Scope is throughout the program. So as we discussed earlier, global variables are available to you inside all functions of the program. Lifetime of extern variable is equal to lifetime of the program. Let's discuss last storage class, that is static. We can declare a static variable like this. Static is the keyword, int count equal to 0. Static variables are initialized only when corresponding function executes first time. Very importantly, static variable retains the value across the function call. That is not happening in the case of automatic variables. Scope of static variable is limited to the function in which it is declared, and lifetime is equal to lifetime of the program. Default value for the static variable is 0. So in this session we discuss about different storage classes in C. In the next session we'll discuss recursive functions in more detail. Thank you. See you again. In this session we are going to discuss recursive functions in detail. A recursive function is a function which calls itself. For example, we are defining the function with the name demo function. So there is a function definition given. There is some code inside the function definition, and then there is a call to demo function itself, and that call makes this function a recursive function. So certain problem statements are having recursive nature naturally. For example, suppose we want to find out the factorial of number n, then we can do that by multiplying n with factorial of n minus 1. So we are defining factorial in terms of factorial. So this is a good problem wherein we can use the recursion. Another example is finding out the Fibonacci series. So we know that Fibonacci of n is equal to Fibonacci of n minus 1 plus Fibonacci of n minus 2. When you are using recursion, be careful that you are providing stopping condition. Otherwise, these functions call each other infinitely, and then there is infinite execution of the program. Program goes in infinite loop and it do not stop. So stopping condition is very much essential. Due to performance reasons, generally loop is preferred than the recursion. So in the next session, we'll discuss function examples in more detail. Thank you. See you again. In this session, we are going to discuss function example in more detail. We'll take one problem statement, and that problem statement is write a program to find out the addition of two numbers using user-defined function. So we are going to implement this program using four different methods. First, we will implement this program without using any user-defined function. Then we will use user-defined function which accepts no argument and it returns no return value. Then we will implement the program with a user-defined function which accepts the argument but have no return value. And finally, we will implement the same program that accepts the argument from the function and also have some return value. So we are going to have four different solutions for the given problem, and in every solution we will use a different version of user-defined functions. Let's go ahead. Let's write the C code to add two numbers without using any user-defined function. So the code look like this. So you can see that in the code there is only one function, that is a main function. I have not added any user-defined function here. So main function does everything. It accepts two values from the user, perform the addition, and then finally display the addition on the screen. Let's go ahead. Let's write a user-defined function now. We want to perform the addition of two numbers. We will use user-defined function, but that function will not have any argument and it will also have no return value. And this is how the code will look like. So in the main function, I am calling the function add. Add is a user-defined function. Note that on line number 2 to 9, add function is defined. In this case, since I am defining the function above the main function, function declaration is not separately given. As we discussed, add function do not accept any argument and return type of this add function is void, so it do not return anything. You can see that in add function, I am accepting two values from the user, I am performing the addition, and at the same place I am displaying the result. So everything is done in the function add itself. So thus we have user-defined function which do not have any argument and it is not returning anything. Let's go ahead and implement same program with a user-defined function which have some arguments but no return value. And the code is like this. You can note that inside main function I am accepting two values from the user, number 1 and number 2. These two values I am passing as an argument to the function. So there is a function call on line number 13, and in function call number 1 and number 2 values are passed as an argument. Function is defined from line number 2 to 7. Since function definition is above the main function, function declaration or prototype is optional here. So this function accepts two integer argument, it performs the addition and it displays the result. This function is having void as a return type, so it do not return anything. So thus we implemented a user-defined function which accepts certain arguments from the main function and it do not have any return value. Let's go ahead and write one more version of this problem statement. So we want to use user-defined function which accepts argument as well as it has some return value. Here is the code. So you can see that in main function I am accepting two arguments. I am calling the function on line number 13. I am passing number 1 and number 2 as an argument when I am calling the function. So add function is expecting two arguments. Definition of add function is given from line number 2 to 7. It is performing the addition of two numbers and it is returning me the value of result. This value is an integer value So inside main function, I am accepting that value inside the result variable, and inside main function, I am displaying the total result. So thus we have user defined function which accepts the argument and it also have the return value. So in this session, we implement different versions of user defined function. You have understood that we can implement same code by using different methods. Thank you. See you again.
I'm in front of you with yet another interesting coding challenge. We have discussed user-defined functions in detail. So in this coding challenge, you need to create your own user-defined function. And here comes the problem statement. You need to implement C code that will check whether the given character is in uppercase or lowercase, and you have to use user-defined function for the implementation. So you will be creating your own function in this program. So I appeal you to implement this code on your own. But before proceeding, let me give you some hint about how to go ahead with this coding challenge. You can follow this sequence of actions. You can accept a character from user and check the ASCII value of that character. If the ASCII value is in between 65 and 90, then it is in uppercase. If the value is between 97 to 122, then that character is there in the lowercase. So with this small amount of information, you'll be able to solve the given coding challenge. Of course, you have to use the conditional statements here. You can use if, else condition. The detailed solution of the same will be discussed in the next session. Thank you. See you again.
In this session, we are going to implement a program to check whether given character is in uppercase or lowercase. And for this, we are going to create an user-defined function for the same. So to check the character is uppercase or lowercase, we need to know that the ASCII code of the uppercase letters are in the range from 65 to 90. ASCII codes of lowercase letters are in the range 97 to 122. Otherwise, if the ASCII code is beyond both of these range, then that character is something other than the alphabet. In this program, we need one character variable, and now we are accepting the value of this character variable from the user. Let's use a user-defined function with the name checkCase. We are passing the character variable ch as an argument to the function. We need to define this checkCase function, and we will define it above the main function. This function will have the return type as a void, and it will accept one argument, that is one character variable. Let's write the code inside the checkCase function that will check whether the given character is uppercase, lowercase, or something else. First condition checks if the ASCII value is in the range of 65 to 90, and if it is there, then that particular character is in uppercase. Second condition checks if the ASCII value is in the range from 97 to 122, and if it is there, then that character is in lowercase. If above both conditions are false, it means that the given character is not an alphabet. So our program is ready. Let's save, compile and execute this program. There are no compilation errors. So program is asking me one character. Let me give the character as a small p. And the output is the character p is in lowercase. Let me again execute this. Now I am giving capital letter H as an input. And now the character H is in uppercase. Again I am executing this, and suppose I am giving the plus as a symbol, and then the output is the character is not an alphabet. So the program is executing as per our expectation, and we have used the ASCII values to check whether the character is in uppercase or lowercase. Thank you. See you again.
I am here with yet another interesting coding challenge for you. Note that we have discussed looping control statements earlier, and we also discussed how to create user-defined functions. Knowledge of these two things will help you to implement this coding challenge. And here comes the problem statement. You have to implement C code that will print odd numbers from 1 to n. You have to implement this code using various loops. So note that here we can make the use of different types of loops. So try to use each and every type of loop and print all odd numbers from 1 to n. I appeal you to implement this code on your own. But before proceeding, let me give you some hint. So this is the flow of sequence you can follow. You can accept the number n from the user. You can create 3 user-defined functions, each one using different type of loop. That is a for loop, while loop, and do while loop. In the loop, you can iterate through all elements from 1 to n, and every time you can check whether the given number is odd or even. So with this hint, you will be able to solve the given coding challenge in a most efficient manner. The detailed solution of the same will be discussed in the next session. Thank you. See you again.
In this session, we are going to implement a program which print all odd numbers from 1 to n using different types of loops. And here we will accept the value of n from the user. In this program, we need one integer variable number, and the value of this number we will accept from the user. Then we'll call a user-defined function which will print the odd numbers up to this number. Print odd is a user-defined function that accepts one integer as an argument. It do not return anything, and this function will do the printing of all odd numbers up to this number. We need to add the code of print odd function before main function. The return type of print odd function is void, and it accepts one integer argument. So in this function, now we will use a for loop which will print all odd numbers up to number n. If I modulo 2 is 1, then number is odd, and we have to print that particular number. Let's add one printf before the for loop. And now since we are using for loop inside this function, I am renaming it as a print odd underscore for. So I need to change the function name in the main function as well, wherein I am calling the function. Now our program is ready. Let's compile and execute this code. There are no compilation error. It is asking me a number. Let that number is 22, and it has displayed odd numbers up to 22 correctly. So here we have used for loop for printing odd numbers up to number n. Now we will implement the same code using while loop. So let me go in the main function. I'll copy this function call. I'm adding one more user-defined function, print odd underscore while. So now we will add one more function in this program, print odd underscore while. So what I'll do is I'll copy this code. Now the name of the function is print odd underscore while. This function is accepting one integer argument and it is returning void. We'll change this printf, and now we have to replace this for loop by a while loop. So we need to do the initialization of I above itself. While initialization of I we have done on line number 14. We need to take care about increment of the variable I. That's it, our code is ready. We have added one more function, that is a print odd underscore while, and it prints all odd numbers using the while loop. Let's compile and execute this code. Okay, so we are getting the output, and that output is correct. Thank you. See you again.
So with this hint, I am sure that you will be able to solve the given coding challenge in the most efficient way. In the next session, we will have the discussion of detailed solution. Thank you. See you again.
In this session, we are going to implement a program to print 1 to n tables. We'll accept the value of n from the user. Basic skeleton of the program is ready. We need one integer variable, and the value of that variable we will accept from the user. Let's call a user defined function to print the table. This function will return nothing and it will accept one argument, and that will be of the type integer. Let's add this function code before the main function. So what we'll do is, in this function we'll print only one table, and that will be the table of number n itself. I'm using a for loop. Since in the table we need to have the 10 entries, this for loop will start from 1 and it will go up to 10. In the for loop we have added one printf, and that will display the value of I multiplied by n. So let me put one printf before this for loop. We have written the code of print table function, and this function is printing table of number n. Let's compile and execute this code. So it is asking me one number, let me say number 6. Now the output is correct. So now we are able to print table of one number. What we want to do is, we want to print the table of all numbers up to number n. So this is possible if we have the two loops. One loop will iterate through all numbers from 1 to n, and other loop will take care of actual printing of the table. So here outer for loop is taking care of printing table of all numbers from 1 to n, and inner for loop is actually printing the table of one particular number. On line number 10 in the printf, there should be multiplication of I and j. Let's compile and execute this code now. It is asking me one number, let that number is 5. So we are displaying the tables correctly, but the output is not as per expectation. We need to give the new line in our printf. So after printing every table, we should go to the new line. So I am adding a new line on line number 12. Let's compile and execute this code again. And now it has printed all tables right from number 1 to number 7 correctly. So in this program we have written code that will display the table of all numbers from 1 to given number. Thank you. See you again.
Again, I am in front of you with yet another coding challenge. This coding challenge is related to the user defined functions. So we are going to implement certain miscellaneous codes using user defined functions. And here comes the problem statement. You need to implement C code that will check whether the given year is a leap year or not. So you know the concept of leap year, and with that knowledge you will be able to implement the code. But let me give you some hint about the implementation. There are certain conditions that need to be satisfied to be a leap year. The condition number 1 is either year modulo 400 should be 0, or year modulo 4 should be equal to 0, and at the same time year modulo 100 should not be equal to 0. So these are the two conditions that tells us that whether the given year is a leap year or not. Now you need to implement these conditions using if-else conditions. I think this is good hint for the implementation, and I appeal you to implement this code on your own. The detailed solution of the same will be discussed in the next session. Thank you. See you again.
In this session, we are going to implement C program to check if given year is a leap year or not. Let's discuss logic or strategy to check whether the given year is a leap year or not. First condition that tells us that given year is a leap year is if year modulo 400 is equal to 0. Second condition is if year modulo 4 is equal to 0 and year modulo 100 is not equal to 0, then given year is a leap year. If above both conditions are false, then given year is not a leap year. So with these three conditions, we are able to check whether the year is a leap year or not. Let's go ahead and implement this code in C. So template code is ready with me. I have a variable year and I am accepting the value of year from the user using printf and scanf. Let's add conditions to check whether the given year is a leap year or not. First condition is if year modulo 400 is 0, then given year is a leap year. Else if year modulo 4 is 0 and year modulo 100 is not 0, then also given year is a leap year. If above both conditions are not true, then given year is not a leap year. Let's compile and run this program. It is asking me to enter a year. Let me enter the year 2020 and the output is correct, that is it is a leap year. Let me again execute this program and give the year as a 2000, and 2000 year is also a leap year. So thus our program is executing correctly. Thank you. See you again.
Here again, I am in front of you with yet another interesting coding challenge. We are discussing the implementation of certain miscellaneous programs in C language. And here comes the problem statement. You need to implement C code that will check whether the given number is a prime number or not. Now this is again a very important problem statement and many times asked during the interview process. Prime numbers is an interesting concept. You have learned it in your school days. So now you need to implement the code for this coding challenge. Let me give you some hint for the implementation. Let's understand the concept of prime number. A number which is divisible by only 1 and that number itself is a prime number. So simplest strategy can be use a loop, try to divide the given number from 2 to n minus 1, and anytime if it is able to divide the given number completely, then of course it is not a prime number. With this hint, I'm sure you will be able to implement the code on your own. Detailed solution of the same will be discussed in the next session. Thank you. See you again.
In this session, we are going to implement a C program to check if given number is a prime number or not. Let's discuss logic or strategy to implement this program. The simplest strategy is try to divide given number with different numbers from 2 to n minus 1, and given number should not be divisible by any of these numbers. A more efficient strategy is given, that is strategy number 2, that the number should not be divisible by any number right from 2 to n by 2. So we don't need to iterate the loop till n minus 1, but we can stop it at the position n by 2, and that is sufficient to check whether the given number is prime number or not. The most efficient strategy is the number should not be divisible by any number from 2 to square root of that number. So this will minimize our iterations further, and this is the most efficient strategy out of these three. So in this session we will implement the third strategy to check whether the given number is prime number or not. And the idea is we'll start from 2, go up to square root of n and try to divide given number by each of these numbers, and it should not be divisible by any of these numbers. Let's go ahead and implement the C code. So my template code is ready. I am accepting a number from user and storing it inside the variable number, no. We are going to use square root library function. So for this purpose I need to add the header file math.h. Let's use a for loop. Initial value of I is 2 and it will go up to the square root of n. In this condition we are checking that number modulo I is 0, and if it is 0 then the number is divisible by the I, and in that case the number is not a prime number, and then we can stop the execution of this program. If we reach to the end of the for loop, then definitely this number is a prime number. Let's compile and execute this program. It is asking me to enter a number. Let me enter the number as 11, and this number is a prime. Let me again execute this and give the input as a 57, and it is not a prime number. One more time, 89, and it is showing me the correct output. So thus we implemented a program to identify whether the given number is a prime or not. Thank you. See you again.
I'm in front of you with yet another interesting coding challenge. We have discussed looping control statements and user-defined functions in the earlier sessions. So you need to use these concepts while solving the given coding challenge. And here comes the problem statement. So you need to implement a C code that will find out the factorial of a given number. And you can use different types of loops for the implementation. Let me give you some hint about the implementation. So you have to accept the number n from the user. The formula to calculate the factorial is pretty straightforward. That is the multiplication of all numbers from 1 to n. So we have to use this formula for the implementation. You can use a for loop that will iterate all numbers from 1 to n, and it will do the multiplication of all these numbers. So with this hint, you'll be able to implement the given code in a more interesting way. The detailed solution of the same will be discussed in the next session. Thank you. See you again.
In this session, we are going to implement a program to find out factorial of given number, and we will implement this code using loop. So we know the formula to find out the factorial of number n is multiplication of all numbers right from 1 to n. So in this program, we need one integer variable and need to accept the value of that integer variable from the user. We will create a user-defined function findFact. We'll pass this number as argument to that function, and that function will find out the factorial of given number, and it will return the result, and that result we are going to store in the result variable. So let's add user-defined function findFact above the main function. This function will return integer value, and it also accepts one integer as argument. Let's create a temporary variable fact. Initialize the value 1 inside that variable. This for loop will start from 1 and it will repeat up to number n, and every time it will multiply the number I with the value which is there in the variable fact, and finally it will return the fact value to the main function. We store that return value inside the variable result, so we need to display this result to the user. Let's execute this code, and now it has displayed the correct value of factorial of number 5, that is 120. So in this code, we implemented program to find out the factorial of given number using a for loop. Thank you. See you again.
Here is another interesting coding challenge for you. We have discussed the user-defined functions, and we have discussed the interesting concept of recursion. You need to use the recursion concept while implementing this solution. Here comes the problem statement. You need to implement a C code that will find out the factorial of given number. We have already implemented this code using loops, but now we want to implement the same code using recursion. So I appeal you to implement this code on your own. But before going ahead, let me give you some hint about the implementation. So this is the flow of sequence you can follow. Accept a number n from the user. You need to have a recursion formula with you if you want to apply the recursion. So this formula is here. Factorial of n is equal to n multiplied by factorial of n minus 1. So once you know this formula, then implementing the user-defined function for the same is easy. And that way you can find out the factorial, and finally you can display it on the screen. So this hint is good enough to get started with. The detailed solution of the coding challenge will be available in the next session. Thank you. See you again.
In this session, we are going to implement a program to find out the factorial of given number using recursion. So in case of recursion, function calls itself. If function is calling itself, then it is called as a recursive function. In recursive functions, it is very much necessary to give the proper termination condition. In case of factorial, the recursive formula to find out the factorial is like this. Factorial of n equal to n multiplied by factorial of n minus 1. With this background, let's go ahead and implement the code for finding out the factorial of given number using recursion. So template code is ready with me. I am accepting a number from the user. Then I am calling the fact function. Fact function will find out the factorial of given number and it will give me integer value. That value stored in the result variable, and finally I am displaying that value as a factorial of the given number. So I need to add the code in a fact function, and here we will make the use of recursion concept. In this case, termination condition is the value of n is less than equal to 1, then this function should return 1 value. This is because the factorial of 1 is 1 as well as factorial of 0 is also 1. If the first condition is not true, then it should do the next calculation as multiplication of n multiplied by factorial of n minus 1. So here is the recursive function call. So that's it, our code is ready. Let's compile and execute this code. Let me give the number 5 as an input, and factorial of the number 5 is 120. Let's again execute the code, give the number 6 as an input, and it is showing the correct answer. So thus we implemented the program to find out the factorial of given number using recursion.
Here again, I am in front of you with yet another coding challenge. We are implementing miscellaneous problem statements in C using user-defined functions. And here comes the problem statement. You need to display Fibonacci series. Note that Fibonacci series can be displayed using two approaches. One is iterative approach and the other one is a recursive approach. This coding challenge requires you to use the iterative approach for displaying the Fibonacci series. So I appeal you to implement this code on your own, but let me give you some hint for the implementation. Example of Fibonacci series is here: 0, 1, 1, 2, and so on. You can notice that the initial two terms are 0 and 1. They are there always, but next term is actually sum of previous two terms. So you can use for loop and implement this strategy. You need to use 3 variables, and then you will be able to trace out first number, previous number, as well as next number. So I think with this hint, you are going to implement this code on your own. The detailed solution of this coding challenge will be discussed in the next session. Thank you. See you again.
In this session, we are going to implement C program to display Fibonacci series. Here we will use iteration approach for displaying the Fibonacci series. Let's discuss logic or strategy for displaying the Fibonacci series. In Fibonacci series, first two terms are always 0 and 1. So we will initialize the variable first to 0 and variable second to 1. Then we will ask user how many terms he want to display. Then we will have a for loop that will repeat for terms number of times, and every time it will find out the next element, which is equal to first plus second. Then assign the new value for the first as well as second and display the value of next. Let's go ahead and implement this logic in C program. So template code is ready with me. I am asking user how many terms he want to display. I am accepting that value inside the terms variable, and then I am calling the function fib_iteration and passing the terms as an argument. So this function displays the Fibonacci series up to given number of terms. Let's go in the fib_iteration function and write the code there. Note that this function has a return type as a void and it accepts only one argument, that is equal to number of terms. Declare a variable for first, initialize it to 0. For second, initialize it to 1. And let's have one more variable I, which will be used in the for loop. So we will have a for loop that will repeat terms number of times. So inside the for loop, we will make next to be equal to first plus second. Then we will assign new value to the first as well as second, and finally display the value of next. Let's compile the code. Okay, so variable name is not terms, but it is num. Let's compile it again. Next variable is not declared by us, so let's declare it. Now we can execute the code. So it is asking me how many terms to display. Let me display the 9 terms. And it has displayed a Fibonacci series. And total it has displayed 9 terms. And you can notice that every term is sum of previous 2 terms. So this way we implemented a Fibonacci series using iterative approach. Thank you. See you again.
Here again I am in front of you with yet another interesting coding challenge. We are implementing miscellaneous codes in C, and we are using user-defined functions for the implementation. Here comes the problem statement. You need to display Fibonacci series on the screen, and last time we did this using iterative approach, but now you have to implement this code using recursion. So I appeal you to implement this code on your own, but let me give you some hint for the implementation. Already you know that Fibonacci series starts with 0 and 1, and thereafter every time the new term is actually sum of previous 2 terms. So here is the recursive formula that will help you for the implementation. F0, that is the first term in the Fibonacci series, is 0. F1, that is the second term in the Fibonacci series, is 1. And thereafter nth term in the Fibonacci series is sum of previous 2 terms. So I think this hint is good enough for the implementation. I appeal you to implement this code on your own. Detailed solution of this coding challenge will be discussed in the next session. Thank you. See you again.
In this session, we are going to implement program to display Fibonacci series, and we will implement this program using recursion. Let's discuss logic or strategy for implementing this program. Fibonacci series always starts with 2 key terms, that is 0 and 1. After these 2 terms, each term is sum of previous 2 terms. So you'll see that the third term is 1, which is sum of 0 and 1. Fourth term is 2, which is sum of second and third term, and so on. So this way the Fibonacci series will look like. So here we can apply recursion to find out the nth term of Fibonacci series. So nth term of Fibonacci series is sum of n-1 and n-2 terms of Fibonacci series. In recursion we need termination condition, and here we have 2 termination conditions, that is f0 is either 0 and f1 is 1. So that time the value will be returned as it is. Let's go ahead and implement the Fibonacci series using recursion. So template code is ready with me. I am asking user how many terms he want to display, accepting that value inside the terms variable, and then I am displaying the Fibonacci series with the help of a for loop. This for loop starts with 0, it repeats up to terms, and every time it calls a recursive function fib_recursion and pass I as an argument. Let's write the recursive code inside the fib_recursive function. Fib_recursive function accepts one integer as an argument, and it also returns one integer value. This is our termination condition. So if the value of num is either 0 or 1, it will return the same value. Else the Fibonacci term is equal to sum of previous 2 terms, sum of fib recursion num-1 and fib recursion num-2. Let's compile and execute this code. It is asking me number of terms to display. Let me give the number 9. and you can see that the Fibonacci series is displayed having 9 terms. So thus we applied recursion to display the Fibonacci series. Thank you. See you again.
Here comes another interesting coding challenge for you. This coding challenge is related with user-defined functions and different methods that are used to pass the arguments to the function, particularly call by value method we are going to explore in this coding challenge. Here comes the problem statement. You need to implement C code that will swap the values of two arguments which are passed to the function. Note that you have to use call by value method for the implementation here. So I appeal you to implement this code on your own. Let me give you some hint for the implementation. You need to define a function that will swap two values. It will accept two arguments using call by value method. Note that for swapping two arguments, you can use third variable, temporary variable, and then it will be easy for you to implement this task. And basically we want to see whether we are able to swap the values using call by value method. So I appeal you to implement this code on your own. The detailed solution of this coding challenge will be discussed in the next session. Thank you. See you again.
In this session, we will learn how to pass arguments to the function using call by value method. Here we are going to implement the program to swap the values of two variables using call by value method. We are going to add a user-defined function swap in the program that will swap the content of two variables. Suppose the value of x is 10, the value of y is 20. Then we'll declare a temp variable and initialize the value of x inside the temp variable. Then we'll make x equal to y and then y to be equal to temp. This way, using third temporary variable, we are going to swap the content of two variables, that is x and y. Let's go ahead and implement the code. So template code is ready with me. I have two variables p and q. I am accepting the value of p and q from the user. I am calling swap function and passing p and q as arguments. It is expected that swap function should swap the values of p and q, and after the swap function I am printing the values of p and q and I am expecting that the value should be swapped. Swap function has a return type as a void. It accepts two arguments, that is p as well as q. Let's write the code inside the swap function. So here we implemented the logic to swap the content of two variables p and q. Let's compile and execute this code. It is asking me to enter two numbers. Let me enter the number 10 and 20. And notice that after swapping also the first number is a 10 and second number is a 20. So actually swapping has not been done. Let's understand the reason behind this. Note that when we are passing the arguments to the swap function, we are using call by value method. In call by value method, the value of variable p is simply copied in the variable p which is local to the swap function, and similarly the value of variable q is copied into the local variable q which is there for the swap function. Note that the p and q used here inside the definition of swap function are independent than the p and q which are used inside the main function. So though the logic that we have implemented to swap the content of two variables is correct, the effects of these swapping are not visible to me inside the main function, and the reason is call by value method. So in this program we discussed the concept of call by value method, and we understood that when we are using call by value method, any change made in the argument of the function will not be reflected in the main function. Thank you. See you again.